Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures, where humanity always rises. It started with a feeling, like the stars themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something enormous to arrive. People felt it before they saw it. Stations trembled, comms flickered, and somewhere deep in the void, reality began to twist. No one realized it yet, but humanity had returned. The galaxy had gone on without humans for centuries. In the early ages, humans were everywhere, making allies, starting trouble, inventing things nobody asked for, and fighting enemies twice their size just because they refused to back down. Everyone knew humanity was unpredictable, dangerous, brilliant, chaotic in the most inconvenient ways. But one day, the noise stopped. Earth went silent. Human colonies stopped transmitting. Ships vanished from trade routes. Wars faded. Treaties expired. And slowly, painfully, undeniably, humanity disappeared from the galactic stage. Entire generations grew up without ever meeting a human. People spoke of them the way you speak of a storm that happened long ago. Destructive, unforgettable, but no longer a threat. Nobody thought they would come back. Ambassador Talivor certainly didn't. She was sipping warm Kelroot tea aboard Diplomatic Station Epsilon when her implant buzzed so violently she nearly spilled it. Ambassador, her aide's voice cracked with fear. You need to get to the observation deck right now. She sighed, already expecting another minor crisis. Is it the Hesh pirates again? No, ma'am. This is different. That word, different, had a way of ringing through a person's bones. She hurried to the observation deck, her robes whispering across the floor. But when she arrived, the sight she found stopped her cold. Everyone was silent, perfectly still. Diplomatic officers, military personnel, analysts, none of them spoke. They simply stared at the enormous viewing screen, faces pale, eyes wide. Tali followed their gaze. At first, she saw nothing, just dark space. But then the darkness bent. A long ripple shuddered across the void, distorting starlight like it was being dragged across broken glass. Pressure built in the air, a physical heaviness that made her chest tighten. A space-time disturbance. Large, artificial. Her heart skipped. That can't be natural. Before anyone could answer, the station's AI spoke in a clear, emotionless tone. Identified signature. Terran warp engine. 98.7% match. The teacup slipped from her fingers and shattered across the deck. Terrans? After 3 centuries? Impossible. The disturbance grew sharper, brighter, more violent. Lights flickered across the station. Every shield reactor hummed. The galaxy had seen wormholes before, but nothing like this. It felt less like a portal and more like something enormous was forcing its way back into reality. Broadcast systems across the sector activated automatically. Attention all forces. Unidentified Terran vessel detected. Maintain distance and prepare defensive protocol. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy trembled. Everyone remembered the stories. Terran warships were fearsome. Terran captains even more so. They fought as though survival was a choice they refused to surrender. Their ships never retreated. Their people never abandoned their own. Humanity's old doctrine echoed like a legend. If you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. But humans were gone, weren't they? The disturbance collapsed inward with a thunderclap of warped energy. Light snapped back into place, and then a shape appeared, a massive black silhouette emerging from the rift, like a beast waking from a long sleep. The ship slid into real space with unnatural grace. Smooth, silent, deadly. Its hull was pitch black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Engine vanes glowed with a dim, eerie blue. No markings at first, just a colossal shadow. Then the light shifted, revealing something engraved into its armor. TSF Vanguard. Tali's mouth dried instantly. No, not possible. The Vanguard was a myth. A ghost. A Terran warship lost 300 years ago in the Siege of Eridus. Some believed it was destroyed. Others whispered it ventured beyond mapped space. A few conspiracy theorists like to claim it found something ancient and terrifying. But whatever happened to it, nobody expected the ship to return. And yet here it was, looming like a memory shaped into metal. Across the galaxy, reactions ignited in seconds. The Seraphine Choir activated planet shields. The Hesh clans armed their war fleets. The Curan Protectorate scrambled interceptors. And the ancient Ulthari sent a single, chilling message. Do not provoke them. The Ulthari didn't fear anyone. Ever. The fact that they warned others meant the situation was worse than anyone imagined. The vanguard drifted toward the station, slow, precise, silently observing. The diplomatic crew watched with bated breath. Nobody dared move. Nobody dared blink. Even the station commander whispered, "Why are they here? After all this time?" As if answering, the ship powered up its communication array. Static burst through every channel. A crackle. A hiss. Then a voice broke through, steady, calm, unmistakably human. "This is Captain Arden Holt of the Terran Stellar Fleet," he said. "We are returning." Returning? From where? Why now? And most importantly, for what? The connection cut. No explanation. No further details. Suddenly, panels along the Vanguard's front hull opened with smooth, mechanical precision. Something large unfolded, circular, layered, glowing from within. Defensive systems on the station and escort ships locked onto it immediately. "Is that a weapon?" someone shouted. "No," Tali said softly. She recognized the energy signature instantly. "It's a scanner." But Terran scanners weren't ordinary. They were deep spectrum, long range, capable of mapping entire systems down to the molecular level. The beam swept outward like a pulse of ghostly blue light. It washed over the station, the fleet, the asteroid belt, even the outer debris ring. When the scan completed, the Vanguard transmitted a second message. This one was much shorter and far more terrifying. "We have detected hostile entities," Captain Holt said. "Evacuate all civilians immediately." The message ended. No clarification, no guidance, no explanation of what hostile entities meant. Silence fell across the station. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of dread. Every officer stared at the Terran ship, muscles tense, waiting for something, anything to happen. The Vanguard hung there in the dark like a silent judge, as if deciding the galaxy's fate. Tali felt something cold settle deep in her chest. Humans never issued warnings lightly. If they said something hostile was coming, then something truly horrific was on its way. She looked at the warship's dark silhouette, its engines pulsing like a heartbeat against the void. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Captain Holt, what followed you out there?" There was no reply. The Terran warship remained motionless, watching, waiting, and the galaxy held its breath. The station felt smaller suddenly, as if its metal walls were shrinking with every passing second. The Vanguard remained motionless. People whispered in tight corners, voices trembling as rumors spread like wildfire. Some claiming the Terrans were here to finish what they started centuries ago. Others convinced the hostile entities were already among them. Tali didn't believe either theory. Not yet. Humans, for all their flaws, rarely acted without reason. Their reputation for violence was overblown by species who forgot that Terrans always fought for something, never just to destroy. But that didn't mean the new threat was any less real. She turned to the station commander. "Have we detected anything unusual? Any signatures, energy patterns, foreign signals?" "We've scanned everything," he muttered, eyes locked on the Vanguard. "Nothing out of the ordinary." Nothing out of the ordinary. Exactly the kind of phrase that scared Tali even more. Humans didn't warn about nothing. The Vanguard's engines glowed faintly, a slow, rhythmic pulse that felt disturbingly alive. It was almost hypnotic, steady, patient, watching. For a ship that had reappeared after 3 centuries, it showed no signs of confusion or malfunction. If anything, it seemed prepared, almost as if it expected what was coming. The comm system crackled suddenly. "Ambassador," her aide whispered. "You should hear this." Tali hurried to the console. "What is it?" "We're picking up something. A faint signal just outside the system." "Whose signal?" "That's the thing," he hesitated. "It's matching part of the Terran scan. Whatever they were searching for, it might be connected." A chill crawled up Tali's spine. The station commander leaned closer. "Show it." The screen shifted. Static. Noise. A flicker of distorted light. Then nothing. It's weak, the aide said. It's almost like it's phasing in and out of real space. Tali frowned. Could it be cloaked? If it is, the commander growled, it's using technology we've never seen before. Silence settled again, thick and unsettling. Then something even stranger happened. The Vanguard moved. Not much, just a subtle shift, a slight tilt of its bow. But the motion was enough to send a ripple through the station's sensors. A low vibration rolled across the deck. Why is it repositioning? Tali asked. The commander shook his head. We're not targeting them. We haven't made any aggressive moves. Maybe, Tali murmured. They aren't reacting to us at all. The idea hung in the air like a storm cloud. Outside, the blackness of space swallowed everything except the massive Terran vessel. The ship's silhouette was sharp and unnatural, like a weapon designed to frighten enemies before firing a single shot. Tali felt a pressure behind her eyes, an instinct older than her training, older than diplomacy, older than logic. The Terrans weren't repositioning defensively. They were positioning themselves to intercept something. A warning alarm blared across the station. Unidentified object entering the system. An officer shouted. High velocity. Nonlinear trajectory. The commander's face drained of color. Type. We can't identify it. Tali's heart hammered. Whatever was out there, the Terrans had known it was coming. The station vibrated harder as the mysterious object tore through the outer defense grid, not crashing through it, slipping through it, as if its form bent around the barriers without ever touching them. What in the void? Someone whispered. The station's visual feed caught the first glimpse. At first it looked like a shadow. No shape, no features, just a smear of darkness cutting across space like a tear in the cosmic fabric. Its edges flickered. Light bent around it. Stars seemed to warp wherever it passed. Tali grabbed the console to steady herself. Is that a ship? No, the commander murmured. I don't think that's a ship at all. The shadow grew larger, approaching the inner orbit. The Vanguard reacted instantly. Panels opened across its hull. Weapons hummed to life, but not in a threatening direction. Every cannon pointed toward the intruding shadow, not the station. A deep, thunderous voice echoed through the comms. This is Captain Holt of the Terran Stellar Fleet, he announced. Stand down. Do not engage. The hostile entity is approaching. Hostile entity. Now they were seeing it. Tali swallowed. Open a channel to the Vanguard. We've tried, the officer replied, hands shaking over the controls. They're not responding. The shadow twisted unnaturally, splitting into two, then three shapes, each pulsing with a dark, shimmering glow. As it drew closer, the sensors glitched again, struggling to lock onto anything solid. It's disrupting our scanners, the commander barked. One of the signatures just disappeared, an analyst cried. No, Tali muttered, staring at the shadow as it flickered in and out of perception. It didn't disappear. It moved. How can it move that fast? It's not moving fast, she whispered. It's moving differently. Space around the shadow rippled like water. Then, with a sudden jerk, the largest fragment shot forward, accelerating toward the station with terrifying speed. Impact trajectory, the officer screamed. It's coming straight for us. The station jolted as emergency shields activated. Evacuate non-essential personnel, the commander roared. Prepare for. A blinding flash cut across the dark. Not from the station. From the Vanguard. 1 second, the Terran warship hung silently. The next, a colossal barrier of blue-white energy exploded outward from its hull, stretching across the system like a protective dome. The shadow collided with the barrier. The impact was violent, an eruption of distorted light and sound that shook the station to its core. People fell. Systems shorted. Panels burst. And yet the barrier held. The shadow recoiled, its form writhing, flickering, screeching across frequencies no living creature should hear. Tali pressed her hands to her ears, tears forming involuntarily at the sound. What is that thing? Someone cried. Nobody answered, because nobody knew. The shadow lunged again, only to be blasted back by a pulse of Terran energy that tore a hole through its flickering form. Captain Holt's voice returned. "Do not interfere," he ordered. "We will neutralize the threat." The shadow shrieked again, its form shifting wildly. Smaller fragments peeled off, darting unpredictably, vanishing and reappearing like sparks in a dark storm. One of them darted straight toward the station. "Brace!" the commander yelled. Before anyone could react, a streak of blinding light fired from the vanguard, tearing through the fragment with surgical precision. The shadow piece evaporated instantly. No debris, no remains, just nothing. The room fell into stunned silence. Tali felt her pulse thundering in her throat. She looked at the Terran ship, awe and fear mixing equally in her chest. Whatever humanity had become, they were not the same species the galaxy remembered. The remaining shadows circled the vanguard like predators, but the Terran warship didn't retreat. Instead, its entire hull began to glow, power building in waves of radiant blue. Tali stared, breathless. "They're going to unleash something big," she whispered. "Like what?" the commander asked. She shook her head. "Something we've never seen." The shadows lunged. The vanguard lit up, and the entire galaxy watched, frozen between terror and awe. The shadows tightened their circle around the vanguard, flickering like broken reflections cast on the surface of a disturbed lake. They didn't move the way ships moved, nor like organisms. Their motion was erratic, unsettling, like they were sliding through reality instead of flying through it. Each shift in their shape made the station sensors scream in confusion. Tali pressed one palm against the cold glass of the observation window, trying to slow her racing heartbeat. Something inside her, something instinctive and ancient, knew that if the Terran warship wasn't here at this very moment, the station would already be gone. It was a terrifying thought. Even more terrifying was how calm the Terrans seemed in the face of it. The vanguard didn't shift positions. It didn't evade. It didn't attempt to flee. It simply turned its cannons and shields toward the swirling shadows with the patience of a veteran soldier who had already survived the worst the universe could offer. "What are they waiting for?" one of the analysts whispered, fear leaking into her voice. "An opening," Tali murmured. "Humans always wait for the right moment." The commander snorted. Humans were reckless maniacs. "Reckless," Tali agreed, eyes fixed on the vanguard, "but never stupid." Before the commander could reply, the shadows attacked. Not with lasers, not with projectiles. They simply rushed the vanguard, slamming into the Terran energy barrier with a force so intense that the entire station vibrated. The barrier rippled like a living bubble of light, struggling to contain the pressure. A sound followed the impact, a low, grinding hum that burrowed into the skull, making people wince and grab their heads. It wasn't a sound meant for biological ears. It was something deeper, something that felt like it was bypassing auditory nerves entirely and whispering directly into the brain. The shadows screamed again, and the station's power flickered dangerously. "Shields dropping," an officer yelled. "This isn't even aimed at us," the commander snapped. "We're just too close." The Vanguard's engines flared. Bright blue veins of energy crawled across its hull, like veins glowing beneath skin. The weapons arrays rotated, locking onto each shadow without hesitation. Then, finally, the Terrans acted. A single beam of concentrated energy shot from the Vanguard's forward cannon. It wasn't a typical blast. It didn't explode, didn't spread, didn't fracture. It extended outward like a needle of pure light, slicing through space with surgical precision. The moment it made contact with the nearest shadow, the creature, or entity, convulsed violently. Its form shattered, splitting into dozens of smaller shards that writhed like dying embers before disintegrating completely. The entire station gasped. "They killed it, they actually killed it," someone whispered. But Tali didn't celebrate. The shadow wasn't just dead. It was gone, completely erased. No debris, no radiation, no remains. Almost as if whatever the shadow had been, it was never meant to exist in this reality at all. The remaining entities screeched in frequencies that made the lights flicker. They scattered, then regrouped, swirling together as though communicating. "That did something," Tali breathed. "They're reacting." The commander clenched his jaw. Reacting how? We're about to find out. Another entity lunged at the Vanguard, faster than the eye could track. The Terran warship's shields expanded outward, curving into a dome that absorbed the attack. The impact pressed against the barrier like a living weight. The metal of the station groaned, overwhelmed by the sheer pressure radiating through the system. And then, "Ambassador," the communications officer shouted. "A message from the Vanguard." Tali spun around. "Put it through." Captain Holt's voice filled the room. Deep, calm, unshaken. "This is the Vanguard. Be advised, these entities are phasing irregularly. They do not occupy a stable dimensional field." The commander frowned. "In simpler words, they aren't fully here," Tali whispered. "They're crossing between dimensions." Captain Holt continued. "Our weapons can eliminate them, but only during convergence. Do not attempt engagement. Your defenses will fail." The threat in his voice wasn't aimed at them. It was aimed at the shadows. Another violent pulse rippled through space as the shadows slammed the Vanguard from all sides. The Terran barrier flickered, dimming for the first time. Tali felt her stomach twist. The Vanguard wasn't invincible. It could be overwhelmed. "Why aren't they falling back?" the commander hissed. "Even humans aren't reckless enough to sit still under that." "Because," Tali said quietly, "there's nowhere to fall back to." The station officer monitoring long-range scanners suddenly froze. "Commander, Ambassador, new readings coming in." "What now?" the commander snapped. "Something large. Approaching fast. And I mean fast." Tali's throat tightened. "Is it another shadow?" "No," the officer swallowed. This one looks different." "Different. That terrible word again." The display zoomed in. At first, all they saw was distortion, warped space, bending light, radiation trails. Then, slowly, something like a shape emerged. A shape far bigger than the station. Far bigger than the Vanguard. It moved like a planetary eclipse sliding across the system, blotting out the stars behind it. Tali's heart stopped. That can't be real. The entity fully materialized. Huge. Silent. Impossible. Not a ship. Not alive. Not mechanical. It was something else. A dark mass structured like an enormous, shifting sphere, with countless tendrils peeling off its surface. Tendrils that pulsed with sickly colors, constantly rearranging like they were searching for something to devour. Every sensor on the station died at once. Every screen went black. Lights flickered and dimmed. Only one thing kept shining. The silhouette of the Terran warship. The Vanguard stood alone between the entity and everything else in the system. The Terran ship rotated toward the new arrival, weapons glowing brighter than before. The hull's energy veins pulsed with urgent intensity, building toward a charge the station couldn't analyze. Then Captain Holt's voice returned, low, and this time unmistakably grim. "Station Epsilon. Begin full evacuation procedures immediately." Tali stepped forward. "Captain Holt, what is that thing?" A long silence followed. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something she had never heard from a human before. "Fear. It's what destroyed our colonies." The words smashed through the room like a hammer. "Captain, we'll hold it off as long as we can," Holt continued. "But listen carefully. Do not attempt to aid us. Do not approach. Do not send ships. And do not, under any circumstances, activate your FTL." The commander's face paled. "Why? Why can't we jump?" "Because," Holt said softly, "it hunts the distortion." The massive entity drifted closer, tendrils reaching, probing, tasting the fabric of space. "And if you jump now," Holt finished, "you'll lead it straight to every populated system within range." Tali felt her knees weaken. She realized, with horrifying clarity, why the Vanguard had returned. Not as a conqueror, not as a warning, but as the only wall standing between the galaxy and whatever nightmare followed them home. The station fell completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. And outside, the entity slowly opened, like a monstrous flower blooming in the dark, revealing something inside it. Something worse. Something coming. The entity unfolded, not with the grace of a creature, nor the logic of a machine, but with the slow, dreadful inevitability of a nightmare stretching awake. Its outer layer peeled back in thin sheets of darkness, revealing a glowing core that pulsed like a wounded star. Every pulse sent ripples through space, actual distortions the naked eye could see. People on the station stumbled as gravity twisted for a split second. The commander grabbed the railing. What in the name of every star is happening? Tali felt the pressure too, like the universe was breathing wrong. It's bending the field, she whispered. Reality, it's thinning. More darkness spilled outward, each tendril moving with calculated purpose. They weren't flailing. They were reaching, searching. The communications officer screamed suddenly. Vanguard is charging all major arrays. Whatever they're planning, it's big. On the screen, the Terran warship glowed brighter and brighter. The veins of light across its hull pulsed, like a heartbeat speeding up. Small plates along its spine shifted, splitting open to reveal internal chambers brimming with contained energy. Tali recognized it instantly. Oh no, they're preparing a Star-Lance burst. The commander looked horrified. That weapon can shear a moon in half. If they fire that close to us, they won't miss, Tali said softly. They never do. But even as she said it, she wondered if the Vanguard had enough firepower for this thing. The shadows they destroyed earlier were nothing, mere fragments. This massive entity wasn't just a threat. It was the source. Captain Holt's voice came through again, strained now. Station Epsilon, confirm your evacuation progress. We've begun, the commander replied. But half our pods are unusable after the first distortion hit. We'll need time. You don't have time. Tali stepped forward. Captain Holt, what is that thing? We need to understand. A long, heavy silence. Then Holt exhaled, not like a soldier preparing for battle, but like a man remembering something he wished he could forget. We called them the Hollowborn. The name alone chilled the room. They don't invade. They don't conquer. They erase. Entire worlds. Whole populations. Not out of hunger or aggression, but instinct. Like a cosmic predator clearing territory. The entity's glowing core darkened for a moment, as if listening. When they find a system, Holt continued quietly, the first thing they do is strip away its light. Almost on cue, the lights in the station flickered again. Darkness crept across the windows. Stars outside dimmed, swallowed by a creeping pall that spread from the entity like smoke. Emotions too, Holt added, voice thinning. Their presence drains everything. Fear replaces hope. Silence replaces reason. If they get close enough, even thoughts start unraveling. Tali shuddered. How did the Terran survive them? We didn't. Holt's voice cracked. Not really. No one dared to speak after that. On the screen, the entity extended another tendril, this one massive, curling like a colossal claw reaching toward the Vanguard. Space warped visibly around it. Smaller shadows spun around the tendril like insects orbiting a flame. The Vanguard fired. A blinding bolt of blue-white energy shot forward, a concentrated lance that tore through space with impossible speed. It slammed into the reaching tendril, slicing it cleanly in half, before continuing toward the entity's core. For one breathless second, the galaxy seemed to hold still. The beam struck the core. A ripple exploded outward, silent but violent. The station shook hard enough that alarms shrieked. Consoles sparked. Panels blew open. Several officers were thrown off their feet as gravity spiked, then vanished, then returned again. But the entity didn't die. It absorbed the hit. The light dimmed only slightly before growing brighter again, angrier. No, Tali whispered. That was their strongest hit. The commander's voice trembled. So what do we do now? Before Tali could answer, Holt's voice returned, lower, heavier. We hold. The entity's tendrils reformed, thicker than before, writhing like they sensed blood in the water. The energy around it intensified, spiraling into a vortex that dragged debris and smaller asteroids toward it. The Vanguard repositioned itself, putting its entire bulk between the station and the Titan. Captain, Tali said, barely able to breathe. If the Star-Lance didn't work, it wasn't meant to kill it. What? Then why use it? To get its attention. The commander stared at the screen in disbelief. Are you out of your mind? Why would you want that thing's attention? A faint static crackled over the comm before Holt answered. So it focuses on us, and not the rest of you. Tali felt something twist painfully in her chest. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to buy time. The entity turned fully toward the vanguard now, every tendril aligning like points of a spear. The glowing core pulsed faster, and a growing hum spread through space, a deep, rumbling vibration that made teeth ache and thoughts scatter. Tali clutched her head. Make it stop. The station's lights dimmed further, screens flickering. It's charging something. The analytics officer gasped. I don't know what it is, but if it fires, we won't survive. The commander finished grimly. And the vanguard? It didn't move. It didn't retreat. It simply drew its shields inward, redirecting all power to the forward barrier. The hull crackled with overcharged energy. The veins of light turned white-hot, glowing like molten metal. The weapon ports sealed shut, every single one. They weren't going to shoot. They were going to block. Tali grabbed the console. No, they can't stop that. Holt, listen to me. You have to fall back. His reply was so quiet she barely heard it. Ambassador, we've done this before. And you lost, she cried. Which is exactly why we know what comes next. The entity's core burst open. A beam of impossible brightness erupted, massive, world-killing, a raw column of energy tearing through space, like a hole punched through reality itself. It carved a straight line toward the vanguard with unstoppable force. The commander whispered, horrified, "This is the end." But Holt's final words came through, steady, resolute, unbearably calm. "Don't forget us." The beam hit the vanguard. The light swallowed everything. The station shook like it was being ripped apart. The galaxy went silent. The brilliance of the attack burned across space, like a second sun. For a moment, every sensor and every eye froze. The vanguard, already massive, already legendary, was engulfed in a beam of energy so intense that it seemed impossible the ship could survive. The station shook violently, alarms screaming. People fell to the floor, clutching whatever they could to stay upright. Consoles sparked and fizzed as the energy from the distant beam warped the local field. Even the distant stars seemed to flare and dim in response to the sheer magnitude of what had been unleashed. But then silence. Not the peaceful, calm silence of relief, but the kind of silence that comes after a storm so violent it seems the world itself is holding its breath. And in that silence, the vanguard emerged. Not destroyed, not broken, transformed. The hull glowed, veins of energy spreading outward, pulsing like the heartbeat of a living thing. The ship's shields flared, expanded, and solidified into something more than a barrier. It was as if the vanguard had absorbed the strike itself, feeding on the energy to become stronger. Its cannons, previously sealed, opened with a quiet hum, ready, patient, lethal. The entity recoiled, its tendrils whipping in confusion. It had expected a collapse, a surrender. It had expected terror. What it received instead was calm precision. The calm of centuries of survival, of combat honed to perfection. Captain Holt's voice finally came through, clear and unwavering, cutting across comms in a tone that made Tali's hair stand on end. They underestimated us. They always do. The shadows twisted and writhed, reforming into shapes more menacing, more desperate than before. Smaller fragments surged forward as the massive core recalibrated, seeking the source of the attack that had survived intact. The vanguard shields flared in response, energy radiating outward in a defensive sweep that pushed the smaller shadows back like an invisible tide. The station crew watched in awe and terror. This was no longer a simple confrontation. It was a display of power that the galaxy had not witnessed in centuries. Humans had survived extinction. Humans had returned, and they carried a force the galaxy had forgotten, or perhaps had never truly understood. Tali gripped the railing, eyes wide. How is it surviving that? The commander didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. The answer was on the screen. The vanguard moved like a predator, anticipating every motion, every reaction, and every strategy of the hollow-born entity before it happened. Its weapons were synchronized with its shields, its engines, and the very pulse of its hull. It was alive in a way no artificial intelligence could replicate, a lethal, calculating presence that demanded respect. And then the entity attacked again. Not with a single beam this time, but multiple tendrils, writhing and snapping in impossible angles. They struck the Vanguard with a force that should have shattered it, sending energy waves that rippled through the station. The human ship absorbed, deflected, and redirected each strike with surgical accuracy. One by one, the tendrils were cut, vaporized, or forced to retreat. Yet the core remained, pulsing and glowing, sending out faint waves of energy that distorted space itself. Tali swallowed, unable to take her eyes off the screen. "Captain Holt, what is it planning?" Holt's reply was calm, almost serene. "Patience. It cannot harm what it cannot understand. We will teach it." "Teach it?" the commander asked, incredulous. "That thing, its form, its power, what does he mean?" Tali didn't answer. She already understood. Humans didn't fight blindly. They didn't attack without purpose. And if Holt said he was going to teach this entity, then he had a plan that nobody else in the galaxy could comprehend. The Vanguard was more than a ship. It was a weapon, a sentinel, a force of nature designed to tip the scales against threats like this. The entity's core pulsed brighter, sending out a shock wave that destabilized satellites in the system. The station trembled again. People scrambled to brace themselves, but even as panic rose, the Vanguard remained the immovable center of the storm. It was a statement. Humanity had returned, and it would not bow. Then the first cracks appeared in the entity. Not visibly, not dramatically, but on the sensors. Energy readings dropped in localized spots. Its tendrils trembled as if sensing pain or disruption. The Vanguard shields had not only withstood the assault, they had learned from it. Adjustments were made in real time. Every vector calculated with perfect precision. Every strike, every defense, every counterattack flowed like a deadly dance. Tali's voice trembled as she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. They're winning." The commander shook his head. "No, that's impossible. That thing, its core, how can it even?" Before he could finish, another beam erupted from the entity, aimed directly at the Vanguard. But this time, the Terran warship anticipated it. Its shields flared brighter than ever, absorbing the attack not as a defense, but as fuel. The hull pulsed and glowed brighter with each hit. Energy fed back into the ship, strengthening it, empowering its next move. Captain Holt's voice broke the tension again. Now, the Vanguard fired. Not one weapon, but many. Cannons, pulse emitters, and concentrated lances of energy converged in perfect synchronization. The attack struck the core of the hollow-born entity, not as a scattershot assault, but as a single, coherent strike designed to neutralize the threat efficiently. The beam tore through the entity's defenses with precision that no other race could achieve. The entity screamed, or what approximated a scream in frequencies that human ears could sense. Light, shadow, and energy twisted violently around its core. For a moment, it looked like the entity might shatter, vanish, or retaliate. But the Vanguard held its ground, pulsing its own energy in response, stabilizing the attack. Then slowly, the shadows around the core dissipated. The hollow-born entity recoiled, staggering backward as though it had finally realized it was facing an equal. It paused, undulating slowly, almost cautiously. Tali could feel the tension through the observation window, the unbearable awareness that the battle had shifted. The Vanguard had not only survived, it had forced the entity to rethink, recalibrate, reconsider. The station held its breath. Captain Holt's voice returned, steady, commanding, almost gentle in its tone. "It's learning. It's calculating. But it will not touch you. Stand down. We will hold it." Tali felt her pulse slow. The terror still alive, but tempered with awe. For centuries, humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, and forgotten. Yet here they were, back from extinction, holding back a force no other species could hope to confront. The hollow-born entity pulsed one final time, then receded slightly, its tendrils curling back toward its distorted core. The system space seemed to relax a fraction, though the threat remained palpable. It was still massive, still dangerous, still alive. But the Vanguard had survived, and that alone was a revelation. Tali whispered to herself. They weren't here to negotiate or to warn. They were here to protect. The station commander exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. Gods help us, if this is only the beginning. Outside, the Vanguard glowed in the darkness, a sentinel standing between the galaxy and the shadows. It pulsed like a heartbeat, powerful, patient, unyielding. The galaxy seemed to exhale, though Tali knew it was a temporary pause. Nothing about the hollow-born entity suggested mercy or retreat. It had only withdrawn because it had to, not because it wanted to. And the Vanguard was ready. It had learned, adapted, and survived in ways the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. Tali couldn't take her eyes off the observation window. Every pulse from the Terran ship was like a heartbeat, alive, deliberate, calculating. She felt it more than she saw it. A rhythm that promised both destruction and salvation, a force that humanity had forged in the fires of survival, now returned to protect everything the galaxy had built in their absence. A sudden tremor shook the station. The hollow-born entity wasn't gone. It was repositioning. Slowly, carefully, it shifted, its tendrils probing the boundaries of the Vanguard's shield like predators, testing the defenses of a fortress. Sensors went haywire. Energy readings spiked, then dropped, then spiked again. The sheer scale of it made the station's instruments seem laughably inadequate. "It's testing them," Tali whispered. "It wants to see what the Vanguard will do next." The commander groaned. "Testing. It's trying to destroy them." "No," Tali said firmly. "It's studying, calculating. It can't destroy what it doesn't understand yet." The Terran warship remained perfectly still, waiting for the right moment. Its energy pulsated in waves that felt almost alive. Every sensor, every weapon, every conduit seemed linked in a perfect network, ready to react instantaneously. Tali realized, with a thrill that ran cold down her spine, that this was what humans had become. Not just survivors, not just warriors, architects of force and strategy on a scale no other species could comprehend. Then, without warning, the hollow-born entity surged, not with an attack aimed at destruction, but with a movement so sudden, so massive, that it warped space around it. The shadows coalesced, forming a vortex of writhing darkness that advanced toward the Vanguard like a tide of night, swallowing the light. Energy readings spiked on the station's instruments. Alarm screamed. Officers scrambled to respond, but there was nothing they could do. Tali grabbed the console, unable to tear her eyes away. "Captain Holt, what are they doing?" Holt's voice came calm, measured, even in the midst of chaos. "They're testing limits. They will not attack until they understand the full extent of what they're facing." Tali's stomach churned. "Testing limits? That's insane." Holt replied evenly. "It's instinct. All predators test their prey before committing to a kill. We are the anomaly." The vortex of shadows collided with the Vanguard shields. The impact reverberated across space, stretching and twisting the very fabric of the system. For a moment, it looked like the Terran ship might be overwhelmed, swallowed by the weight and fury of the hollow-born entity. But then the blue-white shields pulsed brighter, flaring outward like a second sun. The energy absorbed the pressure, redistributed it, and sent it back toward the entity. The shadows screamed, a sound that rattled bones and tore at minds. It wasn't a scream in a traditional sense. It was a frequency that bypassed comprehension, something the brain struggled to interpret as fear. And for the first time, the hollow-born entity hesitated. Tali felt a flicker of hope, followed instantly by dread. The entity had learned. The Vanguard had learned. And in that brief standoff, both were calculating, waiting for the other to make a move. The station's comms buzzed frantically. "Ambassador, we're detecting more fragments of the hollow-born approaching from beyond the asteroid field," an officer shouted. "They're faster than anything we've tracked before." The commander slammed a hand on the console. "If they converge, the station won't survive." Tali swallowed. "We can't rely on the station. It's only here to witness. Holt's doing this for the galaxy." The officer monitoring the sensors suddenly froze. New readings unexpected. Some of the fragments, they're being destroyed before they even reach the Vanguard. Tali's eyes widened. "They're shooting them down automatically?" Holt's voice echoed through the comms. All systems active. Every weapon is firing in predictive sequences. They cannot reach me if I anticipate them. A tremor ran through the observation window as a fragment slammed into the Vanguard's shields. Sparks of blue-white energy scattered outward, illuminating the darkness. But instead of breaking through, the fragment disintegrated mid-collision. Tali felt a shiver run down her spine. It's unstoppable. The commander nodded grimly. Unstoppable and terrifying. Outside, the hollow-born entity shifted again. Its tendrils reached farther, twisting and coiling with an intelligence that was horrifying to witness. Each movement seemed designed to probe for weakness, to find a flaw in the Terran defenses. And yet, every strike was met with a perfect counter. Every assault anticipated and neutralized with frightening precision. Tali realized something impossible. The Vanguard wasn't just surviving. It was teaching the hollow-born entity. Each attack the entity launched was met with a response that made it hesitate, learn, and adapt. Holt wasn't just defending. He was guiding the enemy, shaping its perception, forcing it to recognize the boundaries of its power. It's teaching it limits? The commander muttered. Tali nodded slowly. Exactly. And once it understands, maybe it won't strike again. The hollow-born entity pulsed, brightening, flaring. Its core seemed almost alive, adjusting its energy in response to the Vanguard's countermeasures. Tendrils whipped in every direction, probing, striking, retreating. The system vibrated with the sheer energy of their engagement. It wasn't a battle in a traditional sense. It was a confrontation of wills, a duel of perception and instinct played out across millions of kilometers of space. Then, suddenly, the entity recoiled sharply, as though shocked. One of its tendrils twitched unnaturally. Another retracted. And in that moment of hesitation, the Vanguard acted. A precise pulse fired from multiple weapon arrays simultaneously, striking the entity's core with surgical accuracy. Not enough to destroy it. Not yet. But enough to force it back further, to make it reconsider its approach. Tali felt the weight of the moment. This was the turning point. Holt wasn't just holding it off. He was establishing dominance, showing the hollow-born entity that it had finally met something it could not crush or intimidate. The station trembled as energy rippled through the system. Lights flickered. Consoles sparked. Officers held on to their stations for dear life. But through the chaos, a single truth became undeniable. The Terran warship had returned not to conquer or threaten, but to protect. Captain Holt's voice came one last time across the comms, steady, commanding, unflinching. Station Epsilon, you are safe for now. Prepare for long-term engagement. The entity will retreat for the moment, but it will return. Stand ready. Humanity has returned to the galaxy. Tali's heart pounded. She realized she had been holding her breath. Slowly, she exhaled, overwhelmed by a mixture of awe, fear, and hope. The Terrans weren't gone. They hadn't vanished. And if the Vanguard could hold against a force like this, then perhaps the galaxy's darkest nightmares could still be faced. Outside, the hollow-born entity receded slightly, pulsing and twisting in the void. The hollow-born entity paused at the edge of the system, its enormous form looming like a dark planet. Space itself seemed to recoil from its presence, stars bending under the weight of its shadow. For a heartbeat, the galaxy held still, caught in the suspense of what was coming next. Tali pressed her hands to the observation glass, her mind racing. She could feel it, the calm, lethal patience of the Vanguard. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, a warning, a promise. Humanity had returned, and nothing could stand in their way. The shadows had scattered, but the entity's core pulsed with awareness. It had learned, adapted, and now it hesitated. Every tendril that had once lashed forward now quivered, testing, calculating. And then it moved slowly, deliberately, toward the Vanguard, as if trying to measure its strength one last time. Captain Holt's voice came through the comms, calm and steady. Station Epsilon, this is the final phase. Evacuate any remaining non-essential personnel immediately. What comes next is decisive. The station's commander barked orders frantically, rushing to complete the evacuation procedures. Tali swallowed hard, gripping the railing as she watched crew members hurry toward escape pods. Even as fear clawed at her chest, she felt an overwhelming sense of awe. The Vanguard shifted forward. Its glowing hull flared brighter than ever before, energy veins pulsating like the heartbeat of a living god. Weapons arrays rotated with perfect precision. The Starlance burst was charged, not to destroy blindly, but to end the threat once and for all. The hollow-born entity surged toward the Terran warship. Its tendrils whipped and struck, but the Vanguard's shields flared with blinding brilliance, deflecting every attack. The sheer force of its presence made the system shudder. Space bent under the power of the duel, and for the first time, Tali realized the true scale of what the Terrans had returned to fight. Now Hull commanded. The Vanguard released its charge. The beam of energy tore through space. A needle of pure white-blue light aimed directly at the entity's core. Tendrils reached desperately, attempting to shield it, but the precision was flawless. The beam struck, cutting through the mass like reality itself had been split open. The hollow-born entity screamed in the frequencies of destruction, a sound so terrible it seemed to tear at the very fabric of existence. And then silence. The beam pulsed one last time, and the entity began to collapse inward. Its tendrils fell slack, its core dimmed, and the swirling shadows vanished, evaporating into nothingness. Space itself seemed to breathe again, the void settling after the storm. Tali felt her knees weaken. The Vanguard had done it, against impossible odds, against a force that no other species could withstand. Humanity had returned and held the line. Holt's voice came one final time over the comms, calm, unyielding. The Hollowborn are neutralized for now. The galaxy is safe. Humanity returns, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Stand ready. Stand vigilant. And remember this, if we fall back into the shadows, the galaxy will not survive as we know it. The station's crew erupted in quiet cheers, tears, and disbelief. Some collapsed, hugging one another. Some stared silently at the observation windows, unable to fully process what they had just witnessed. Tali exhaled, a mix of relief and awe. She turned to the commander, her voice trembling with emotion. They came back. After all these centuries, they returned to protect. The commander nodded slowly, eyes still glued to the glowing Vanguard. They didn't just survive, he said. They reminded us all why humanity was feared and why it still needed. Outside, the Vanguard pulsed gently, energy radiating across the system. Its hull glowed like a beacon, a sentinel standing watch over a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to truly fear and to truly hope. Tali took a deep breath and turned to the remaining crew. This is only the beginning, she said. The galaxy has witnessed what we can do when we unite, when we fight not for power, but for survival. Humanity has returned, and now it's up to all of us to be ready for whatever comes next. The stars twinkled beyond the observation windows, peaceful now, though Tali knew that peace was fragile. The Hollowborn might return. Other threats might follow. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had a chance. And the Terrans, unstoppable, vigilant, and brilliant, were there to hold the line. Her mind lingered on the Vanguard, the captain, and the unyielding courage of a species that refused to vanish. And she knew, with a certainty that burned brighter than the stars themselves, the story of humanity had only just begun. If you want to see what happens next in the galaxy, what new threats rise, what secrets the Terrans uncover, and how humanity continues to shape the cosmos, subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and join us as the saga unfolds. The galaxy is watching, and so should you.